We enjoy talking about things that are perfect to us. We love to share things that makes us feel proud. But when was the last time that you told others about something that made you feel ashamed? Like not being able to pay the rent because now, no matter how hard you work, you just don't earn enough money to make ends meet. Or hiding something from your past because you're afraid that if someone finds out, they will think less of you. Or dropping your underwear on the escalator where everybody can see them. Most of us keep secrets. And sometimes it's probably better not to talk about things. Keeping up appearances can come in handy, I admit. But if we only share good news, even to the closest friends and family we have, what message do we send out to others? Confession. I do not run a company with thousands of employees. I didn't overcome some life-threatening disease. The books I write didn't sell 1 million copies worldwide. I don't play any sport that will ever make me a champion. And in contrast to most of you, I know close to nothing about my roots. So, telling a personal story about my background can become a little bit complicated. And that is at the least curious, because I'm a storytelling expert. And let me tell you this, in Holland, a storytelling expert without a personal story, that's like chips with mayonnaise, without mayonnaise. So, a little bit complicated. Over the years, I have trained many authors and many entrepreneurs with their stories. And because I'm a big fan of authenticity, I always ask them, what personal elements can you add to make your story more authentic? And they will tell me the lessons they've learned from their parents or grandparents. How they enjoyed the favorite dish of their mother, which happened to be the favorite dish of their grandmother as well. Or how their grandfather grew up in World War II. And 2 years ago, on November 2nd, 2013 to be exact, it dawned on me. Here I am, telling people about the importance of personal stories. While at the same time, I don't have one. At least not a complete one. What do I remember of my youth? When I was little, I was frequently drawn to this dark wooden cabinet in the living room. Inside, on a shelf, was a silver picture frame carrying a black and white photo of my Surinamese grandfather, who I knew nothing about and never met. I must have taken it off the shelf at least 100 times, staring at this man who seemed to be the male version of me, but older. My Surinamese grandfather died under mysterious circumstances when my father was only 16 years old. Running from pain, my father decided to travel to Holland. And here he met my beautiful mom, who was stunning, but even younger than he was. And they immediately decided that they wanted to share the future together. Her parents were against this marriage, and not only because she was so young. See, back in the 70s, even in Holland, interracial marriages were not so common as they are today. But they decided to marry anyway, because otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. But that was about all I knew. A few facts. No stories about their parents. No stories about their grandparents. No stories about their roots whatsoever. I always thought that I would find out nothing more about my Surinamese grandfather. But life is like the wholesale company of unexpected presents. So, 12 years after I moved out of my parents' place, I received an online message. It was from a cousin from my father's side. I didn't even know she existed. But she found me on social media. And I was quite surprised about the information she gave me. According to her, my grandfather didn't have roots in Suriname. He was born and raised in Guyana and lived with his family, and they were rich. But when he met my grandmother and fell in love with her, she was half Venezuelan, half Indian, and poor, and his parents were not so pleased about that. But my grandfather was stubborn and decided to marry her anyway. And I guess that interracial marriages weren't so popular in that period of time either, because his family then disowned him. So without money, but with my grandmother, he decided to leave the country, and they settled in Suriname. It took me 32 years to find out that I don't have 3 bloodlines, but 6. And 2 years ago, I realized that I still don't have a complete story about my background, and that I probably never will. While most of you grow up with stories of your parents and grandparents and how their lives used to be, some people, some children, grow up without them. Because sometimes people don't want to share stories of their personal background. They're too ashamed. Sometimes talking about it is so painful that they feel it's better not to share it with anyone, not even their children or grandchildren. I guess that my parents wanted to protect me from whatever traumas they endured in the past and not relive them. But as a result of that, I grew up in a constant state of wondering and a constant feeling of disconnection. Now, I learned some valuable lessons because of that. If people don't know what their roots are, they feel incomplete because a big part of their lives is unknown. And if you want to make a real connection with people, it's sometimes necessary to share the things that you're ashamed of, even when it involves confessing that you don't really have a complete story about your personal background. And 2 years ago, I was writing my second book. It was a diary full of confessions, and I shared some very personal information. Stuff that made some of my friends say, "Are you sure you're willing to share this information to the whole world?" Private information, like sharing your yearly income of the last 6 years, while in fact you weren't doing as well as an entrepreneur. In this book, I put my trousers down and told the world everything I did during my quest of doubling my monthly income within a period of 100 days. I told them about my failures, about my uncertainties, the thoughts I have, my hopes, my fears. I told quite a few things that I felt ashamed of, like screaming in pillows when journalists at a public event take photos of everyone you know. You see it in the paper the next day, but you're not in a paper. Or deciding that you suffer from low self-esteem when it comes down to deciding on what fee you should ask for the work that you do. I shared quite a few things that I felt ashamed of, personal information. It was so personal that when I sent it to publishers, they sounded somewhat like my friends and replied with, "It's really fun reading it, but we feel it's a little bit too personal for a big audience." Okay. The thing is, I had nothing to lose, really. Keeping up appearances didn't get me anywhere. So I decided to go ahead and write it anyway. An honest book. Something different than the success guides that are available. About how it is to be an entrepreneur in times of crisis, and how it is to feel ashamed when people ask you how it's going and it's not going so well. The great thing is, after 100 days of writing and reflecting upon my actions, I in fact managed to double my monthly income. And I started to give speeches. I even started training other professionals with their business. And something really beautiful happened as well. I received a lot of emails of other entrepreneurs who recognized themselves in my story. Complete strangers started to open up to me and talk to me about their challenges. It's like author and research professor Brené Brown once so strikingly said, "The most powerful words when we're in struggle, me too." One story, my story of one entrepreneur, gave a face to a whole group of entrepreneurs. Newspapers, magazines, they all started to write about it. And it's logical because we cannot connect with perfection. It's boring. We are anything but flawless. In the real world, we have to work really hard and still don't get the success we aim for. In the real world, on some days we just feel shitty, even though we do post photos online of drinking cocktails at perfect sunsets. In the real world, we sometimes struggle for 3 hours to build one IKEA bookcase and still don't get it right. If you look around really closely, you will find that the real world does not consist of perfect Facebook characters. We keep up appearances. We love to share our successes. But it's not what we really want, is it? What we really want is to share our values, our hopes, our dreams, because that is what makes us happy. Today, I'm 40 years old, and I realized that the pieces of information that I do have about my past really helped me to complete my personal story a little better and understand myself a little better. I guess that my stubbornness to always follow my heart rather than rules or money has something to do with my grandfather's choice to prefer love over money. And with the 6 bloodlines that I inherited from my parents, it's only natural that I'm drawn to different cultures as well. My partner is half Danish. Now, you may think it's not so exotic, but trust me, it is. Growing up without stories probably inspired me to become a storyteller myself. Maybe it was my way of fitting in. And that I made a business out of helping other people with their stories. Maybe that was my way of trying to prevent history from repeating itself. It turns out that the very thing that makes us human is our ability to connect to each other through stories. So go out and tell your children and grandchildren about what storms encountered your life and how you weathered them or not. Dare to share some of the things that you feel ashamed of. And if you're an entrepreneur like me, behind every success story lies a path of failure and determination. Talk about that, because we need that. We learn from that. And it gives others the opportunity to connect with you on a deeper level. Talk to the lady standing next to you in the supermarket. Listen to her story and find out why she had that sad look on her eyes. Invite others to share your struggles with you. Because ultimately, your story is never a story about you alone. It's also the story about the people around you, about how they influence you and how you influence them by sharing your experiences. And sometimes your story is that you don't have a story. And how that made you feel while growing up, feeling incomplete, disconnected, and trying to find and understand yourself. But if you're willing to share your dreams, as well as your fears, that is usually all it takes to turn disconnection into connection and failure into success. Thank you.